The content of this podcast should not be considered financial or investment advice. All interviews and discussions are opinions only, and the podcast has been created without taking into consideration the listener's financial objectives, financial situation, or needs. Listeners should obtain independent advice before making any financial decisions. Hi, this is Barry Fitzgerald, Garimpeiro columnist for Stockhead. Welcome to another edition of the Explorers Podcast. We're catching up with a newbie on the ASX today, Cosmo Metals. Code is CMO, listed on January 31 through an IPO that raised $5 million. And it has advanced copper, nickel, cobalt, and perhaps PGE projects in the Yamana area, which is about 130 kilometres east of Laverton in WA. Now, as I said, they are advanced. This is not moose pasture stuff because these projects have probably had more than $6 million or so spent on them in recent years by Great Boulder Resources, which spun Cosmo off onto the market so it could focus on its gold interests. Now, to bring us up to speed with what this lightly capitalised group is, and I just mentioned there, it's trading at 19.5 cents for a market cap of sub $10 million. So if you're looking for a leveraged play in the space where we've got super hot copper, nickel, cobalt prices, this might well be the one. So to bring us up to speed with it all, we have the Managing Director with us today, James Mary Lees. James, how are you?
Yeah, g'day Barry. Thanks for having me along.
Okay, James. Now, I've mentioned in the little snapshot there a bit of the corporate history, but what about yourself? Can you give the listeners who, you're obviously well known in the mining scene there, but can you give listeners a bit of a professional snapshot of yourself up to date?
Yeah, thanks, Barry. I'm a geologist by training and been in the industry, or been in the exploration industry for around 25 years. But really, started off an interest in geology back in the 80s when I was doing a commerce degree. So I came at things a little bit the wrong way around, I guess, for most geologists in the MD space, and was lucky enough to work with some small brokerage houses that had very strong junior exploration portfolios, analysts, etc. And it really ignited an interest in exploration and led to me going back to uni, studying geology, and was lucky enough to come out at a time when the big companies were still had graduate programs and still had big exploration projects. And I was with BHP at that point for a bit over 10 years and was, again, lucky to be exposed to not only some great projects, but some amazing people, in the shadow of the discoveries at Cannington, Akati, and a number of others. And that really cut my teeth, I suppose you'd say, to get out into the junior space and combine some of those experiences, both in the corporate as well as in the exploration space. And my passion is really about greenfields exploration and discovering things, and that really led in a roundabout way to where I am today with Cosmo and the opportunity to explore what I think is a really underexplored belt for base metals. One that's seen a lot of success recently with Gold Road at Gruyere, which is only 20 kilometres to the east of our Yamana projects. And that discovery at Gruyere really, to me, forms a roadmap of how a junior explorer can be successful in what was an unloved and previously unrecognised gold belt. And in our case, I think the base metals potential, whilst there's been some success, as you pointed out, with Great Boulder and a number of other companies in the belt, I think the surface has been lightly scratched, and the opportunity for us and for myself is to get out and really pull this apart, build on the previous work, and build what I think is going to be a pretty exciting portfolio of projects out there.
Now, Gruyere, of course, I think it's about 6.7 million ounces as we talk, so one of the biggest gold mines in Australia as well. Okay, now the focus here is copper, nickel, cobalt, PGE, but obviously we've just touched on the gold potential, so perhaps we will just focus on the copper, nickel, cobalt initially at the Mount Venn and Eastern Mafic projects. You've just announced a start of a maiden drilling program. What's the plan there?
Yeah, Barry, no, exactly. The focus is on copper, nickel, cobalt, and the portfolio has the advanced project at Mount Venn, which I think is really resource ready or nearabouts, and then Eastern Mafic, where a number of EM surveys have been conducted, anomalies have been drilled, mineralisation's been discovered, but a number of targets have been lightly tested and a number of follow-up holes are planned. So really, when you say maiden RC, and I know we announced it as a maiden program, we pre-IPO we got out there under the Great Boulder umbrella, our precursor or the company that vended the projects into Cosmo, and drilled 6 RC holes at Mount Venn, really to give us some news flow post IPO, but to test a number of targets in that advanced project, and came up with some of the highest grade copper hits. In fact, I think the highest grade copper hits that had ever been done at Mount Venn, with I think they were over 46 metres at 0.8% copper as an overall intersection, within which there were a number of pretty broad, more than 10 metres at over 1% copper. So that was quite an exciting development. But the current program, the 3,000 metre RC program we've just announced, majority of it is in around that Mount Venn area, infilling some of those high-grade hits, extending the mineralisation with a view to announcing a maiden, well, let's call it an exploration target, the sort of precursor to a resource, but no question some of that mineralisation will fit in a resource category. And we're working with Entech here in Perth, a well-known resource consultancy, to build that target up. We're also taking the opportunity while we're out at Mount Venn to drill test a number of those eastern mafic targets, including Anomaly 13, where previous drilling had a metre over 3% copper in one of those holes that hasn't been followed up. And again, in terms of talking to some of the groups we're working with, New Exco, well-known geophysical consultancy here in Perth, and people that I've worked with quite a bit over the last 10 or 15 years, have identified a number of targets there. So the upshot of all that is the 3,000 metre RC program. The drill rig's spinning right now. I think as of last night, they'd drilled the first 110 odd metres out there on those eastern mafic targets before moving on to Mount Venn. So quite a bit of news flow coming out over the next couple of weeks.
So that program will take 3-4 weeks to complete?
Yeah. Barry, let's inshallah, I think I'd say to that. But yes, 3 to 4 weeks. And the nice thing is there has been, you mentioned it's not moose pasture. There'd been, I think, about 13,000 metres drilled in Mount Venn by Great Boulder to date, which is a great sort of start to build on. And 3 to 4 weeks to finish that program, and then let's call it 4 to 6 weeks after that for results. But we'll have visual results in the meantime that we can announce.
Eastern Mafic's about 7 kilometres southeast from Mount Venn, and you mentioned that particularly high-grade copper hit there. Is there a difference? Are we talking about the same rocks, the same system? Or?
The short answer is yes. There's no question there's a change in the geochemistry. And one of the things we see at Mount Venn is copper-nickel system with very few PGE or precious metal credits. At Eastern Mafic, on the other hand, we get some platinum group elements, the PGEs, along with the copper and nickel, and higher grade nickel grades compared to Mount Venn. I mean, what we're seeing at Mount Venn, and between Mount Venn and Eastern Mafic, I should say, there's paleo channels, so some deeper cover through there that we don't really have a good feeling for what's happening between the two. Eastern Mafic and Mount Venn, the exploration model's the same. It's a mafic intrusive into the greenstones there that we're targeting, and different mineral chemistry, so potentially different processes. And I think that's quite an important distinction to make with these PGEs, showing a more fluid system, more fluids flowing, potentially targeting some high grade necks or bottlenecks in that structural zone that have potential to host large accumulations of base metals.
Seems to be an emerging province, for want of a better expression, but apparently blessed with electromagnetic targeting, identifying sulfide positions. Apparently every hole that's been drilled hits sulfides. Is that correct?
That's right, Barry. EM's a wicked mistress, I suppose is how I view it. Lots of false positives in many other belts. Salt water, for example, graphite or sediments with graphite in it are all conductive and can lure you off into unproductive drilling. At Mount Venn and Eastern Mafic, in both cases, every hole that's been drilled has been mineralised with massive sulfides. The trick is we're not just looking for massive sulfides. We want to see massive sulfides with copper and nickel. So that's the challenge for us, is discriminating those with pyrrhotite, which is an iron sulfide, and a strong conductor, from the chalcopyrite pentlandite, which aren't so strong. And I mentioned New Exco before. these guys are, I think, some of the best in the business at understanding EM and not just as a geophysical black box tool, but incorporating geology, understanding some of the mineral processes that are key to being successful. I could name a number of discoveries they've been associated with, Sirius Nova, Sandfire, DeGrussa, and numerous others. And I'm really lucky that we've been able to get those guys involved. And aside from the personal relationship, I think they're just excited about the fact that there is this relatively blank canvas to work with a great data set to start with.
And just, again, going to the point that these are Mount Venn particularly, quite advanced projects. And you mentioned the exploration target, stock exchange compliant. You just can't make these things up. But I guess at this stage, does that give us a feel for that we're actually talking about a large-scale opportunity here? We're not talking about a little pod at the moment.
The short answer is I don't really know. I mean, this is the whole purpose of the program. What is economic out in this part of the world? You mentioned where we are relative to Laverton. Appears to be quite a remote part of the world, but I was on site a couple of weeks ago, and you feel like you're in a mining camp. There's not only Gruyere on our front doorstep with their high voltage power lines, their bore field, their haulage roads all running, if not through our tenement, basically adjacent to our tenement. You march out another 420 kilometres, you've got Oz Minerals out in the West Musgraves there with their Nebo Babel copper nickel project, and they believe that, off the top of my head, I think it's about 350 million tonnes at 0.3% nickel, 0.3% copper, that in an extremely remote location that's economic. So really what I'm trying to do is put together the parts of the jigsaw that show to investors, show to us what could be economic, what could be at Mount Venn, and then what we need to support an economic development out there, bearing in mind that, as you say, Mount Venn is the more advanced, but any number of the Eastern Mayfic, the Winchester project we haven't talked about. We haven't mentioned the new tenement that we've just been granted at Mount Venn North, which opens up another 7+ strike kilometres of that belt to us with, in that case, the highest grade nickel hit in the entire belt that hasn't been followed up. So that's sort of the thematic that we're looking at. Great Boulder, who were the previous owners of the project, did some met testing on Mount Venn, some limited work on, I think it was about a half-ton diamond core sample that showed they could produce a saleable copper, nickel, cobalt, or 3 separate concentrates with a 90% recovery. Now, look, they're really early test work, but they're all part of the things that we're looking at to give us encouragement to progress this project to a development.
Yeah, just on that infrastructure, looking at the map here, you can see the power line to Gruyere and a gas pipeline and the White Cliffs Road all virtually cutting through your tenement area.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I say they're at our front door, but they're actually front door and out the back door, really. Gruyere's, 20 kilometres to the east. The Yamana camp, which is the exploration camp for Gold Road, is even closer. There's an airstrip at Yamana. There's a 500-man camp at Gruyere with an airstrip that lands jets on there. So to say it's remote does it a bit of a disservice, and I think really adds to the colour of the project and what could be out there.
I mentioned Gruyere there. I think you're actually off the Yamana shear there, but is there gold potential on the properties?
Yeah, look, there certainly is, and I think that's been underdone as well. Yeah, when you say we're off the Yamana shear, I guess that is open to interpretation. I mean, the Yamana shear is considered the boundary between the Burtville and the Yamana terrain, a major crustal boundary, and they're the kind of locations you want to be for base metals. And you can point to Julimar, the Chalice discovery, as a great example of that. Yeah, I've had a good look at that data, and I think, typical geologists, we can argue till we're blue in the face where the exact location of that shear is, but certainly major structures running up through us. And I mentioned that high-grade nickel hole at Mount Venn North. Well, that's got 0.6 grams gold in it. Yeah, that's never been explored. That part of the belt's never been explored for gold. And I'd also add, just on Gruyere, we're lucky enough to have on the board Ziggy Lubiniecki, who's I call him the godfather of the Yamana belt. I mean, I don't know whether he'd call himself that, But he was sort of integral to the discovery of Gruyere and really the exploration story there. So, I mean, having Ziggy involved, we're tapping into other guys that were involved in that discovery that really helped me as a MD and as an explorer work out those steps that are critical to be successful as a junior explorer. So, yeah, we've got more than one string to our bow in terms of the advanced project at Mount Venn, the drill-ready targets at Eastern Mayfic, but an entire belt. I think we've got over 500 square k's of ground there that I think have been lightly dusted for both base metals and gold, and we'll keep a weather eye out for other potential as well. Certainly, there's potential for uranium and lithium and vanadium in that belt too.
And just talking about the regional potential, I guess we should talk about the Winchester project, northwest of Mount Venn. A historic hit of 7 metres at 1.1% copper. What's the story with Winchester?
Yeah, that's a really interesting project, Barry. It's a joint venture with an ASX company, Ausgold. Cosmo Metals has 75%, and we're operators of that. The interesting thing about Winchester, again, an EM discovery, so an airborne VTEM survey was flown. A number of those bullseyes were tested, and with Winchester being the most successful of those, with, as you say, the 7 metres at over 1% copper. But importantly, there you've got 0.1 plus 1.1 grams PGEs, 0.1 or 0.2 grams gold, and that's a potential game changer. Having those precious metals credits with the base metals can be a really important add-on or co-product for any development. As you mentioned, it's only 20 k's up the road. In fact, we're drilling programs up there, which will be announced over the coming 6 months. We'd probably base ourselves out of Mount Venn and drive up there. It's a relatively straightforward project to get to. Yeah, so there's a number of targets there. Winchester itself, which I think if you see in our presentation has untested potential down deep, along strike, etc., and a number of other, let's call them bullseye EM targets that have either been lightly or untested. So yeah, that's certainly the next cab off the rank in the testing pipeline.
I mentioned it in the opening. There's no better time to be looking for this magic mix of metals. Copper at around $4.70 a pound. Nickel, well, take your pick. Certainly well north of $10 a pound. Cobalt storming back. Nicely timed.
Yeah, look, that's right. Well, I think that's serendipitous, and you can't pick your timing. I think if we make a discovery of note, it wouldn't matter what the net metal prices are. As you mentioned, our market cap at $10 million, over $4 million in the bank, our 50 million shares on issue with 25 million of those held by Great Boulder. They're our major shareholder, with the rest of the register being pretty much a reflection of the Great Boulder register, I guess. So to coin the cliche you've already done, the leverage to any success out there, and may the nickel and copper gods continue to shine on.
I'm not sure whether. Well, I think we're all aware this week that we're talking. I think there were 3 lightly capitalised copper explorers on the ASX at very early stage projects, and have been posting 100% share price gains on the back of visual results with assays to come. So the market seems to be very much in tune with what's going on in the base metals space at the moment.
Yeah, no, definitely, that's right. And I followed those stories, and I can only say that I think we've got better projects than a couple of those. We've got some of those intersections I mentioned. Just the ones before Christmas with 46 metres at 0.8% copper. That's and relatively shallow. And most of that exploration has been done shallower than 250 metres. In fact, it focused really on open pitable targets. So yeah, the challenge for us is to get out, build the story. We're only freshly minted. A newbie, as you say, been out since 31st of Jan, and rigs spinning, some really exciting targets to chase, and some news flow to come. So a good time to be in Cosmo.
Okay, James, a very interesting story. A region, a province there to perhaps in the emerging, with a lightly capitalised junior drilling as we speak. So we'll just finish up there, but I will get you just to give investors a quick snapshot of what they should be looking out for in the coming months.
Yeah, obviously with the drill program at Yamana, the 3,000 metre RC program, focused on Mount Venn, so working with Entech, a well-respected resource consultancy, to produce an exploration target or a resource, which will be on the back of those results or incorporate those results, and also obviously the targets at Eastern Mayfield. So that'll be the key bits of news flow to look out for. But in the background and announcing as well access to Mount Venn North, so opening up that belt, as well as the targets that we'll announce at Winchester. And we've only touched on the Yamana area. We've also picked up pre-IPO some ground in the wheat belt of Western Australia. So they're sort of bullseye copper nickel targets, and I think a testament or certainly talk to the technical expertise of the team that we've got. I mentioned guys that have been involved with the Gruyere discovery, with other major base metals discoveries, and that's really what gets my juices flowing, and where I see the upside. And with the capital structure as we've got, any results are going to be good for shareholders.
Alrighty, James. Well, thanks for your time today. Very interesting story. Wish you the best of luck with it all, and we'll be watching with interest. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Barry.
Cheers.